Hi, welcome back to Global Case Studies with Digital Nations. I'm pleased to introduce our next case study that made the best of a bad situation. The Danish e-government has supported resilience towards common challenges through the COVID-19 crisis. Christine Holmgreen Mailing will share with us how Denmark has managed. Over to you, Christine.
Yes, so hello everyone and welcome to this presentation about public digitalization as a means to navigate through crisis. My name is Christine and I am currently sitting in a cloudy Copenhagen in Denmark at the Danish Agency for Digitalization. First of all, I would like to review the agenda for this presentation. First, I will talk about the motivation behind the study. Second, a little about who we are. Then I will present some cases and enablers. And finally, I will make a recommendation. Yeah, let's start. So, how can public digitalization help solving COVID-19 challenges? Well, first, we started the study because we saw some common challenges with the COVID-19 in the European countries. Since March 2020, countries have had to deal with the same challenges, such as forced closure and lockdowns, vaccine rollouts, infection detection, working remotely, schooling from home, and so on. We've seen that European countries have had different approaches to dealing with these challenges and the pandemic. This has led to different outcomes, which makes it important to share experience and learning points across countries. We found it interesting to look at how public digitalization in Denmark can contribute as a tool for dealing with challenges. That we did because in Denmark, the Danish e-government has shown its work during the COVID-19. In general, the level of digitalization in Denmark has enabled a persistent level of public services, even though in situations with a high degree of people working remotely from home within central governments, regions, and municipalities. Moreover, the government has launched a range of new initiatives to cope with the COVID-19, including a contact tracing app, digital booking of tests and vaccinations, payments of benefits, and more. Cases I will be coming back to. So, which learning points can support digital resilience against similar future crises? Well, Denmark has solved a number of the mentioned challenges through digital solutions. Enablers such as digital infrastructure, political collaboration, trust in public administration, and strong digital skills have supported the solutions. Digital-ready legislation is a specific initiative that can support these enablers. Additionally, the concept of digital-ready legislation is characterized as a low-risk, high-reward initiative and is implementable across all sectors of public administration. I will return to that as well. So, first, a little about who we are. It's my colleague Julius Lyk Jensen and I who have investigated in how public digitalization can be used to navigate through crisis. We work together at the Agency for Digitalization here in Denmark, where we both is part of the Secretariat for Digital Ready Legislation. Today, I will be the one presenting the case, and after that, Julius will take care of the live Q&A session. The Agency for Digitalization is an agency within the Ministry of Finance and was established in 2011 to be in charge of the government's digitalization policies. Intending to renew the Danish welfare, the agency is responsible for the implementation of the government's digital ambitions and the use of digital welfare technology in the public sector. The agency is the engine driving public sector's collaboration in the efforts to digitally transform the public sector. The Danish digital transformation effort is therefore based on a unique common responsibility to embrace the digital mindset and the vision of a digital public sector. The private sector is a key partner in this regard. Furthermore, interaction with the public sector, businesses, trade organizations, and NGOs are also contributing to finding common solutions for the digital transition and helping to secure the foundation for a strong and secure digital Denmark. We work with some main strategies and have accomplished some big infrastructure projects. To mention a couple of the main strategies, we have a national digitalization strategy and a public sector digitalization strategy. And one of the big infrastructure projects is Digital Post, which is a main result of many years of Danish digitalization efforts, is the provision of a single digital letterbox for all official letters sent to citizens and businesses. Since November 2014, it has been mandatory for citizens over the age of 15 to receive digital official communication, digital letters, from the public sector. In 2019, 168 million letters were sent by public authorities through Digital Post. So that's quite a lot. Another big infrastructure project are NemID, which is digital identification solutions used by 5 million citizens and approximately 450,000 firms. Furthermore, we have lifeindenmark.dk, which is a common public portal in Denmark, which present public information and self-services, which ensure that authorities and companies are provided with easy and safe access to basic data in collective systems. The infrastructure consists of basic data such as civil registration numbers, data registered on companies, geographic data, and etc. In addition, infrastructure development includes a continuous focus on the coordination of supporting functions such as data sharing, data protection, improvement of base registers, and so on. So that is the agency we work at. Now I would like to present 3 cases for you that shows how Denmark has solved many of the challenges during the COVID through digital solutions. Furthermore, it shows how important digital readiness has been in the Danish COVID-19 management. Yeah, the first one is called payment of stimulus checks for citizens. So what was the challenge? Yeah, during the COVID-19 crisis, the Danish economy experienced a decline. Corporation and small-scale businesses had downscaled activity, led of employers, and some were forced to put business on hold permanently or temporarily. In the effort to keep the Danish economy intact during the COVID-19, the parliament passes legislation making it possible to cease the payment of stimulus check during early autumn 2020. The tax-free one-time payment of 1,000 Danish crowns, which is like 130 euros, was paid out as part of the Danish economic relief package in response to the COVID-19. This one-time payment was automatically paid out to citizens through their bank account. Furthermore, 2.1 million recipients have been able to apply for and receive early holiday allowance money to a value of 7 billion euros within 7 days. The payment of stimulus check and the holiday allowance money has led to the retail trade index reaching its highest value ever in October 2020. And that was in the middle of the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, when the retail sector across much of Europe was hit hard as a result of lockdown precautions. So, what are the learning points from here? Well, the right to receive the stimulus check on 1,000 Danish crown is based on whether the recipient was registered as being a part of a predefined target group of citizens receiving public benefits. This overview of recipients was partly possible by reusing and combining data from different authorities being responsible for paying out the benefits. By basing the payment of stimulus check on objective criteria available in public databases, an effective automatic payment of checks has become possible. Furthermore, the communication between the authorities and payment is supported by existing digital services as digital post, while the actual payment goes through the citizens' bank accounts. Yeah, so that was the first example. Moving on, here is what we call the contact tracing app. Well, as part of the government's strategy to ensure and control a responsible reopening of the Danish society, the Danish health authorities are using new digital solution that provides an opportunity to see how the infection with the COVID-19 develops in Denmark. As the COVID is a highly contagious virus, it is important to be notified quickly if you have been in close contact with an infected person, so the chains of infection can be broken and thereby preventing the virus from getting out of control. Therefore, in the significant effort to slow the spread of COVID-19, the Danish Ministry of Health, the Danish Patient Safety Authority, the Danish Health Authority, the Danish Agency for Digitalization, and the company Netcompany launched a contact tracing app. The contact tracing app supports the regular contact tracing program where people who test positive are contacted to find out who they have been in close contact with. The contact app is a tracing tool that can be used to let people know if they've been in close contact with a person with COVID-19, for example, on public transport or in restaurants. It is voluntary to download and use the app, and the app can only notify other app users. When sharing the positive test result in the app, the other users cannot identify you as an individual or your location. So downloading and using the app is completely secure. Neither public authorities or private companies can have access to information about who you have been in close contact with or where you are or something like that. Learning parts from here. Well, the process of building a contact tracing app was supported by a high digital readiness in Denmark, allowing authorities to build and implement a new digital tool. Enablers such as digital infrastructure and reuse of data are here important, but also a high level of trust toward digital administration is essential for this case. Yeah, moving forward. The last case is called coordinated management of vaccination. So many countries faces the same challenges and needs when coordinating and prioritizing vaccinations efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic. Digital booking and coordination of the vaccination order have been a fundamental part of the logistical effort of coordinating vaccinations in Denmark. So in Denmark, as well as other countries, a prioritized list was established emphasizing citizens with a high risk of receiving the COVID-19 virus with several consequences. Denmark has benefited from having well-functional digital bookings in the healthcare system, as well as comprehensive and updated master data registers. In Denmark, the prioritized list was based on criteria regarding age, occupation, and health history. Relevant authorities could collect these data linked to the Central Personal ID Register. In addition, invitation to make appointments for vaccination was sent through digital post, while an online government website was established for booking the vaccinations. Citizens, except from obligatory digital post, received the invitation as a physical letter. So, the learning points from here. Well, coordination and digital booking of vaccination has been able to draw on existing digital services and infrastructure, as well as public access and use of register with essential data on citizens. Data from public registers managed by authorities is important for making the prioritized vaccination program run. Automatic procedure has been made feasible by taking departure in objective criteria from already collected data. Prioritizing the invitation based on criteria like age and occupation can be done automatically, thereby avoiding the need for cumbersome manual procedure or validation of identifying documents. Without a central personal ID register, it would have been a more challenging logistical exercise for authorities to conduct a fair prioritization of whom to invite or at what time. Furthermore, digital posts are used for digital communication when public authorities are to contact citizens. Similar appointments for vaccination were made fully digitally using the online booking website. Yeah, so this was the 3 examples. So Denmark has solved a number of the challenges related to the pandemic through digital solutions. These digital solutions can be done due to a number of enablers. Enablers such as digital infrastructure, political cooperation, trust in public administration, and strong digital skills have supported these solutions. So let's talk about these enablers. First of all, digital service and infrastructure have supported the solutions. Core in the Danish e-governance is wide-scale infrastructure projects and digital service solutions benefiting citizens, companies, and public authorities. Today, services and infrastructure are integrated commonly across public sectors, which provide easy and safe access to basic data such as social security numbers and company information. Furthermore, Denmark is a top performer in digital public service, having a high quality level of user centricity and high transparency, to which we see a high level of adoption and use among citizens. Well, another important enabler is long-term strategies and initiatives on digitalization. Since 2001, municipalities, regions, and central government has co-created a common strategy for digital public administration, once every 4 years. From the start, the strategy is aimed towards bringing down bureaucratic administrative processes and an analog communication between authorities, firms, and citizens. Today, the strategies foster common infrastructure and services project and digital initiatives aiming to support collaboration and coordination across sectors. This is done by investing in areas that are particularly complex and in which there are interdependencies across different authorities and sectors. Furthermore, we have a national digital strategy and a political agreement on digital legislation, which I will come back to. At last, an important enabler is the Danish digital environment. A digital environment where there is trust in public administration and strong digital skill has supported the solutions. Danes hold a high level of trust towards the government. A citizen's level of trust in government is a common indicator of public administration's performance and a measure of how well democracies are functioning. Without trust in government, citizens will not participate in e-government. So we say that a high level of data security and transparency leads to trust in the public. Furthermore, the adoption of digital services is dependent on an upgrade in digital literacy and skills among the population. These enablers are of great importance for why Denmark can work with digital solutions. Now I gave you some examples. I talked about enablers. So here is our recommendation for the first step on the way to dealing with crisis digitally. We recommend digital-ready legislation as an easy to implement and effective initiative supporting e-government. Digital-ready legislation is an implementable and concrete initiative that can support the digital infrastructure and services, political cooperation, and good digital environment for e-government. In today's digital society, effective administration of new rules must be taken into account in the legislative domains. In Denmark, digital-ready legislation has been a part of a political agreement since 2018, aiming to ensure that good digital practice are applied to every piece of new legislation. This means that new legislation should attempt towards using terms and concepts that have clear definition across all legislative domains, and that rules should be designed for whole or partial automation of the case proceeding involved. Working with digital-ready legislation means a mandatory focus in implementation from starting to finish. It is mandatory to assess whether legislation is digital-ready. The assessment is based on 7 principles for digital-ready legislation. The Secretary must follow up on whether public implementation impacts are properly described in the new legislation and how the 7 principles are described, as well as evaluate whether digitalization has been fully considered in the creation of a new bill. Good. For legislation to be digital-ready, it has to fulfill 2 criteria. First, the rule must have been drafted with 7 key principles in mind. The principles ensure that legislation will support the use of digital solutions, and they concern a broad variety of parameters needed to create digital-ready legislation. The principles are: 1. Clear and simple rules. 2. Use of digital communication. 3. Automated digital case processing. 4. Reuse of data across sectors. 5. Secure data management. 6. Use of public infrastructure. And the 7. Preventing errors and fraud by digital means. Well, let me go into a bit more detail with, let's say, principle 4 and 5 to mention a couple. The 2 principles illustrate that digital-ready legislation, on the one hand, is about utilizing digital solutions, and on the other hand, securing safe and secure data handling, citizens' rights, and etc. So the 4th principle is all about recycling and reuse. The principle reminds us that a precondition for the reuse of data is consistent definition across sectors. It is important to make sure that the same entitlements are being used across registers belonging to different authorities. This opens up the possibility of sharing data across sectors, which means that citizens don't have to report the same data several times. The 5th principle highlights the need to ensure that government bodies handle citizens' data with the proper concern for security. This entails both clarifying principle of data protection in the drafting phase, as well as introducing the suited technical measure to ensure that data remains secure throughout its lifetime. For example, with the previous case about coordinated management of vaccination, there is use made of principle 2 of use of digital communication, principle 4 of reuse of data, and principle 6 use of public infrastructure. In addition to the 7th principle, it is mandatory to carry out an assessment of what implementation consequences the legislation is expected to have. This means asking questions like, what would be the administrative impact when the new rules are introduced? Will there be a need for implement new digital solutions or to tweak and adjust existing solutions? Or has the impact of the legislation on citizens been sufficiently documented? So these are the guidelines for mandatory digital readiness check. Okay, so why is digital-ready legislation an effective tool for strengthening digital resilience in the public sector? Well, first of all, it improves all key enablers. Digital-ready legislation aims toward improving the use of services and infrastructure, data security, digital transparency, while emboldening long-term strategies into new legislation. Second of all, it delivers impact across all public sectors. Digital-ready legislation is an all-in-one solution, as it implies the same principle across all public domains, which help knitting digital public administration across authorities and sectors closer together. Then it's easier to implement and administrate. Digital-ready legislation is easily embedded into the political and legislative process in the ministries. A secretary collaborates with ministries regarding guidance and support on how to secure that new legislation is digital-ready. The main part of this task is screening and delivering feedback on draft legislation. Therefore, we recommend it as a good place to start when you want to increase your digital environment, which in the long run can create good results, including in connection with future crises. So here is our how-to guide for establishing digital-ready legislation. In Denmark, we got digital-ready legislation in 2018, where it has been a part of a political agreement. It's aiming to ensure that good digital practice are applied to every piece of new legislation. The 7 principles are a guideline on how to make and secure digital-ready legislation. To ensure this, a Secretariat for Digital-Ready Legislation was established in the early 2018 under the Department of the Ministry of Finance. The Secretariat for Digital-Ready Legislation must follow up on whether public implementation impacts are properly described in the new legislation and how the 7 principles are described, as well as evaluate whether digitalization has been fully considered in the creation of a new bill. Furthermore, the Secretary handles the following tasks: screening of legislation draft, assessment of public implementation impacts, and follow-up on issues in regards to this topic. The Secretary creates consultation responses for legislation which contains public implementation impacts. It development and continuous updating and guidance and tools for assessing public implementation impacts, and concealing for ministries regarding digital-ready legislation. So today, in 2021, we have reviewed more than 300 legislative drafts since 2018 and improved compliance with principles. Some of the important learning lessons we have is that significant digital gains can be made from relatively minor changes in rules, and building up awareness and compliance takes time. Yeah? Well, so to sum up, it was possible for the Danish government and authorities to act quickly with useful initiatives to deal with the COVID-19. This was, among other things, possible because of a solid legislative base called digital-ready legislation. The 7th principle gradually builds a legislative complex which authorities can stand upon when they have to build and implement digital initiatives quickly and effectively. Furthermore, digital-ready legislation strengthens enablers like digital service and infrastructure, digital environment with trust and digital skills, and digital strategies are all helping to make it easier for the Danish government and authorities to use digital solutions when coping with the COVID. As the rules are set up for digital administration, it makes it easier to drive forward new initiatives, including a contact tracing app, digital booking of test and vaccination, and payments of benefits. Well, this concludes my presentation on public digitalization as a means to navigate through crisis. I hope you have found it to be useful and of inspiration to further discussions. My colleague and I are always willing to inform and advise those who are interested in digital-ready legislation. So now my colleague Julius will be handling the. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Bye.
Thanks so much, Christine. We now have the chance to chat live with her colleague, Julius Lyck Jensen, for questions and answers. So you can follow the link to the Wonder Room and ask any of those questions that you might have. We'll see you back here at 4 p.m. for our 3rd case study from the UK. We're taking a bit of a brain break from 3:30 to 4, but if you feel like it, you can also follow another link in the agenda to join Olivia Rossi, Forward 50's product manager, to help define the future of the Forward 50 community. We'll see you soon.